On our recent trip to Malacca, my American comrade Ken and I visited the Hang Jebat Mausoleum, which houses the remains of the legendary 15th century Malaccan warrior Hang Jebat, who was by all accounts a Bolshevik before Bolshevism and a remarkable character in the history of class struggle. Hello from the brutal feudal dictatorship of Malacca. I am here with my good friend Comrade Rice, also known as Ken Marks, and please follow his channel, which is right in the description box. Today we are at a 15th century tomb of a very famous 15th century warrior, Hang Jebat. Mr. Mark, do you know who Hang Jebat was?
Yes, I have an idea. He was like a kind of a revolutionist.
Oh yes, he was. He lived 500 years ago, even long before Marxism came about, but he was a very, very important figure actually in the history of Malaya and a very important figure in the history of class struggle itself. Now by right we're not supposed to be visiting his tomb because he's supposed to be a traitor, but yeah. Who cares? He lived hundreds of years ago. You know what happened, Ken? Roughly, you know what happened at this...
Well, he tried to stand for his beliefs. Yeah, stand up for his beliefs, right? Before the Sultan, because at the time, you had to follow by what the ruling class wanted. And he went against it because it was against his morals, and because he went against it, he was tarred as a
traitor and buried in this traitor's tomb. It's not a very big tomb, not a very lavish tomb, but this is a 15th century tomb. Okay, so let's tell the story, right? Okay, let's get back to the beginning. Don't worry, this won't take more than 5 minutes. Okay, basically there were two very powerful warriors in the empire, the Malaccan Empire, right? The kingdom of Malacca, Hang Tuah and Hang Jebat. This is Jebat, right? Anyway, Tuah was basically the Sultan's favorite admiral, right? And unfortunately, there were many jealous people in the Sultan's retinue. Shall we get in the shade? It's a bit hot. This is his mausoleum. Nice place, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, what happened was Hang Tuah gets framed for treason because he gets framed for flirting with the Sultan's wife, the queen. And you know what happens, right? What happens if you flirt with the queen?
That's a death sentence.
Yeah, you get the death sentence, right? So Hang Tuah accepts his fate loyally like a loyal drone because, back in feudal times, whatever the king says is law. In the divine right of kings stipulates that, whatever the king tells you, you have to do. So Tuah is about to get executed, but the executioner knows that Hang Tuah is innocent, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens after that? He keeps Hang Tuah in his chambers, right?
Right.
So after that, Jebat, our friend Jebat here hears the... He hears the news that his friend's been executed, right? And he, of course, what happens if your best friend gets killed by the king unjustly?
You feel vengeful and you want to kill the person who did you wrong.
Exactly. You feel enraged, right? Mm-hmm. So Jebat marches to the king's palace with his sword and he kills everyone who gets in his way, right? He's in a mad killing spree. And so what happens is the king gets very, very frightened. The Sultan gets very frightened because what happened is that the only person who can defeat Jebat in combat is his best friend Hang Tuah. He thinks he's already killed Hang Tuah, but Hang Tuah is actually still alive, right? So the executioner tells him, "Don't worry, I've actually kept the guy alive. So you can actually you can actually." You can use him if you want to, right? So the king summons Hang Tuah, he pardons him for the crime he didn't even commit, right? And, he orders Tuah to dispatch of this traitor. He's not a traitor, he's a rebel. But anyway, so what happens is when Jebat sees Hang Tuah, he's both happy and at the same time, how does he feel? He feels a sense of dread because he knows why he's come, right? Mm-hmm. And so, Hang Tuah, Jebat says, "I'm so glad that you're alive." And Hang Tuah says, "Well, me too, but I have to follow what the king tells me to, right?" So what do? They fight, and Hang Tuah eventually, after a few hours of fighting, Hang Tuah eventually defeats him. He stabs him, and with his dying breath, he says the following words, right? "Raja Adil, Raja di Sembah, Raja Zalim, Raja di Singgah." Do you know what that means, roughly? Raja means king, right?
Mm-hmm. Long live king?
No, of course not. He's a rebel, right? He wanted to kill the king, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that means basically a fair king, a just king, is a king to be upholded, but an unjust king is a king to be condemned, right? Now, why do you think this is revolutionary, even though this is before Marxism? This is even before socialism, even before the modern Western idea of socialism. This is in feudal times, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think this man here is so revolutionary? Why do you think, Ken? Even though this was in feudal times, that he didn't know what capitalism was, because capitalism didn't exist back then. Why is it revolutionary?
Because perhaps it was something he did. He broke against what the king wanted. You know, normally you're supposed to follow anything that your leaders say.
Yes.
But because he believed so much, he wanted. Basically, he didn't follow what the king said, and he went about his own just way that was fair for himself, rather than what she's supposed to be doing.
Yes, he went against the grain. He stood up against the status quo, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, he helped to push society forward. So what do we call Hang Tuah? We call him a reactionary, right? Now I'm trying to test these people to see if they know. What is a reactionary, people? 3 seconds before Ken gives you the definition. 3, 2, 1. Okay, did you get it? Did you manage to type it out in the comment section? Okay, what's a reactionary, Ken?
Reactionary is a person who does things out of spite, does things for the status quo out of spite that they feel that they're entitled to do. And that's against the people, against the will of what's beneficial for them, everyone, rather than for the king or for the leader.
So Hang Tuah could be said to be a reactionary, while Hang Jebat was a revolutionary.
Right.
Because he stood up against the Sultan, because he felt the Sultan was unjust, right?
Yeah.
And that is what defines the difference between a reactionary and a revolutionary. Regardless of the time period we're in, whether it's slave society or feudal society or capitalist society, a revolutionary is somebody who stands up against the ruling class, right?
Yeah.
Now, a reactionary is a person who serves the ruling class.
Right.
Like Hang Tuah, even though he was going to be executed by the Sultan, he was still, sorry, I know it's hot. He was going to, see, they don't even give any shade to him. See, they're so cruel to him even in death, you know. So Hang Tuah was kind of a reactionary, right? Although he's supposed to be a hero, right?
Yeah.
Because Malay culture is fundamentally quite feudal in a sense. That's why it was so difficult for Chin Peng to actually move the class struggle forward in Malaya because, well, feudalism is in the soul of our people, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to make adjustments. We can't do away with the sultans just like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's why, you know, that's part of the reason why we came here. And so can we describe Hang Jebat as like a Bolshevik before Bolshevism? Would that be a fair description of him?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who goes against the ruling class of their time should always be seen as a revolutionary. Because it shouldn't be just about a small number of people who have all the wealth and control over the masses, when it should be the masses that's more important.
Exactly.
Small.
And yeah, anyone who challenges the status quo, if he feels that the status quo is unjust, it's a comrade of ours, right?
Yes.
Even though that person might not have lived in the modern era, he lived in the feudal era, he still pushed society forward in the sense that he was revolutionary because no one in that particular time period would have dreamed about going against the king, right? No one to actually challenge the king itself was a crime that would lead you to damnation, right? So he was willing to go to hell for his best friend. And that's basically the sort of person that is worthy of being called a comrade, right? Even though he was no communist or no socialist, the fact that he would stand up against an unjust power it's inspiring, and it's something that leads that should inspire revolutionaries even today to continue to struggle against, you know, those who hoard all the power, right? And eventually push towards a classless, moneyless society where we're all equal, or where there will be equality, justice, and humanity for all. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.